I'm Joel Anastasi, and we're going to be talking about life mastery, creating the life you want, and the courage to live it, the same thing that's up there. Corporations, as you know, are interested in making money, so although we did a lot of management development work, which basically addressed the questions of, for the employees, who am I? What do I want to do with my life? What are my gifts and talents? Where do I want to work? Because organizations, not surprisingly, are interested in productivity. And a lot of productivity has to do with having the right person in the right job. So when we train them in management development, we help them explore those questions of, what do I like to do? What's important to me? How do I want to use my gifts and talents? What are my gifts and talents? So that we could kind of connect all these things and hopefully have a more productive individual. Well, I have been doing this for over 25 years. And in 2000, I'm still saying 19, as that tells you, doesn't it? In 2010, I was going on a spiritual journey to Mount Shasta. Some of you may know that Mount Shasta is supposed to be a great energetic vortex on Earth. There's a lot of spiritual stuff going on there. So I was going on this program, and if you want to explore the next thing I'm going to say at another time, I'm happy to talk about it. It was being led by the Archangel Michael through a channel, Jeff Fasano. And we were given a stack of material to examine before we went in preparation for the spiritual journey. So I was looking at it and I was so impressed because it was very similar to a lot of the work that I had been doing in corporate America, but it really went much deeper into our individual psyches than I was used to doing, because obviously corporations are only going to go so far. After all, these programs are not designed to help the employee, really. They're designed to help the organization fit the employee to the job. So, but this stuff is really going very, very deep. So as I was looking at it, I could organize it in my head according to the kinds of programs I was doing. So consequently, life mastery emerged from all of that. And what I wanted to do today is, this is a 16-week program. And what I've done is I have presented this at the Center for Spiritual Living in Fort Lauderdale over on 26th Street. And I've sometimes done a presentation where I let the prospective audience look at an overview of what the course is, and they get a sense of it. So what I'm using here, what I'm going to show you here today, is the kind of overview of life mastery that I did for the Center for Spiritual Living. It focuses on some of the key points. So we're going to start, first of all, by looking at a couple of quotes that I pulled out. Well, the program objective is to help you realize your full potential as a human being. Well, that's a pretty high bar. You know, what does that mean, setting your full potential as a human being? As I work with this program, I really believe it achieves that, and hopefully you might start getting some understanding of why I think that as we go through this. I have had this expression, this saying on my refrigerator for a long time, but I think it sort of gives a spiritual context for what the program tries to achieve. Quado is a spirit that appears on the internet, that's quoted on the internet from time to time, but I really love the essence of what it said. You are an immortal soul here for a short time. Enjoy it. Dare. Pull out of your fear and doubt and live your life. Have this experience. That's what the program really helps us really do. That's why I put it here. It says, look it, enjoy it, dare, push out your comfort zones, push out your fear and doubt. I mean, it's really fear very often that stops us cold. I go to the Center for Spiritual Living every Sunday, and they have a new co-pastor up there, and he said something that really hit me. He said, say this to yourself and then do it. If I were not afraid, I would. And then you fill in the blank. And he says, that's what you should do. Well, that's very consistent with this program, and that's why I resonated so much. Anyway, pull out of your fear and doubt and live your life. Have this experience called life. Now, a few years ago, as you folks know, Steve Jobs passed away. And they had a lot of things that Steve was saying and doing on television. And he gave a commencement address to Stanford students back in 2005. And I was so impressed with it because it was so consistent with the teachings of this program. So I yanked this out of it, and I have this in the book too. And what he's saying here is similar to what Quado said. Your time here is limited. Don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living according to other people's thinking. Don't let the opinions of others drown out your own inner voice. Most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. Somehow they know what you truly want to become. What this program does is it helps you get in touch with your inner voice. It helps build your courage to follow your heart, because in essence what Michael is doing is it's turning popular education on its head. I mean, we all grew up saying use your head, right? Didn't our parents always tell us use your head, use your head, use your head? Now, this program doesn't say don't use your head. What this program is essentially saying is the path we take in our lives really ought to come from here, because each one of us is a unique human being, so we have a unique path. How do we know where to go? What path should we follow? The answers lie in here in each one of us. We can't be told that from outside. And the teaching is the mind can create what the heart knows. So we go into the heart, and we're not saying don't use the mind, but use the mind to create and strategize and develop and build what you know in your heart you want to achieve. And that's sort of what Steve is saying. That's what Quado was saying as well. Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. Those are your internal gyro systems. Somehow they know what you truly want to become. Of course, we never tap into our heart. We never find it. We just flop around. Okay? Michael said this, not in the materials that I was looking at, but later on. Because we have sessions with Michael every so often, and I had one about 2 hours ago. You have displaced your power and greatness. You have given yourself away and put yourself in the hands of others. Then he's talking about the conditioning of what our parents, our institutions, our educational systems, our culture has told us we should be, we should do. You have given yourself away and put yourself in the hands of others. It is time to go inside to find your authentic self so that you may discover and be who you are. Through this process, meaning this program, you're going to see it now, you will be deactivating the old conditioning of the nervous system and retraining it into the beingness of self. We don't even know how much we've been conditioned, and I keep, discovering it in myself. But I happened to pick up an autobiography of Gloria Steinem, who's one of the gals just led the feminist movement. And she talks about that in the book too. She's talking about women, of course, and she's talking about herself. And she was talking about how the fact that she keeps discovering and rediscovering her conditioning, because she doesn't realize how limited the perspective was that she came out of her family with about what was possible for her. And she keeps rediscovering it. Every time she's pushing out her comfort zones, it is uncomfortable, and she realizes that she's walking into territory that there was a big no or don't on in her childhood. And I think to some degree that reflects some of all of us, that we had a lot of limiting conditioning by our parents, our schools, the organizations we work for, the culture, the religions, you name it. So we got to deactivate that old conditioning and retrain ourselves into the beingness of the self. That's again what the program is trying to achieve. Okay, and here's the process. We go inside to find our authentic selves. Then we look to do some things to deactivate your old undesirable conditioning so that we may retrain ourselves to fully be and express our authentic selves. So we're gonna, now what I have listed here is the final lesson, lesson 16, sort of is the place where we want to be at the end of the program. So let's look to see what would be the ideal state of being. This program was designed to help you see that you are the creator, the source, and the power of you. You need nothing outside yourself in the physical to determine who you are or to validate or gratify you. It is the love and truth within that is most important. It is this love and truth that powers your courage to be you. It is the love and truth within that is most important. It is this love and truth that powers your courage to be you. Of course, what Michael's talking about is the stuff that we all know about. It's called self-esteem, the sense of self. I mean, people who have a strong sense of self, have confidence in themselves, have strong self-esteem, are the real achievers in the world. And that's having a healthy relationship with yourself. If you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself, then it really is impossible to have a healthy relationship with anybody else, any institutions, any organizations, any people, whether it's spouse, friends, bosses, whoever. If you're insecure, if you're not healthy in yourself, it is very difficult to establish a healthy balance with anybody else. So that's why it's all based on love of self first, and a lot of the program has to do with trying to build that sense of self in the individual. So now we're going to look at 12 principles of life mastery. And not surprisingly, it starts out, let your love for yourself power your courage to be you. Love for yourself is truly a powerful force. That's just not a word. It is really a force in our lives. It's a powerful energy. Incidentally, if any of you folks want to say anything or ask a question, please don't hesitate. This is not, I don't need to keep, I'm dealing with that first one all the time. I don't know anybody who isn't. Even the people who put on these, we all wear a mask, how we present ourselves to the world. And the mask changes depending on who it is. You're one way with one person, you're another way with another person. In one arena you're this, in another arena you're that. The corporate executive who runs the big corporation comes home and he's handpicked by his wife, and he's got a whole other thing going on. So the stable thing is how we feel about ourselves, the relationship we're having with ourselves. So that's such a critical issue. Now we begin to examine the whole issue of our conditioning by looking at what is old that no longer serves us. So the second principle here is break old habits and patterns that keep you in lack and limitation. That has a lot to do with the conditioning, the things we keep doing, the things we keep thinking, the behaviors, the rituals we go through that just keeps us going around and around and around that same old thing. I am constantly rediscovering where I have an old habit that I hadn't recognized before, or an old pattern, where I go, what I do. We all stay in our comfort zones. There's nothing wrong with being comfortable, but the problem with staying in the comfort zone is what? What's the problem with staying in the comfort zone?
You don't grow.
No, you stay small, and I was in the New York Public Library on 42nd Street a couple of years ago. I was looking at the cards they had there, and they had this great little card which I took out and I photostated for my whole class that I was doing at the time. Life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. It doesn't mean we don't do what we enjoy and what we're comfortable, but we're not going to grow if we just stay comfortable all the time. So Michael says, that's why you're always at the beginning. If you are constantly pushing at your comfort zones, you're always at the beginning of something new. And that's how we should live our lives. June, did you want to say something?
There's saying that I memorized, it's short. It says, if we always do what we always did, we will always have what we always had.
Oh, I love that. And you better love what you always had, because you're stuck with it. Yeah, great. Okay, 3 is very closely aligned to that. Release attachments that do not serve your highest good. What are we talking about when we talk about attachments? What do we mean by attachments?
Your cars, your house.
Yeah, they're persons, places, things, all those things that are in your comfort zone where you're kind of stuck to them and you're dependent on it. So if you have a small circle of, I'm sorry, I don't mean it, of boring friends, you just kind of stay with that small circle of boring friends, or you just stay in one little town. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and I knew about it before I was 10 years old. I had to get out of there. I could not deal with those winters. my blood is Mediterranean, I think, and so I really needed a warmer climate. And I went to Syracuse University, and I just went to New York City. I thought everybody did that. I still remember I was just out of the Army Reserves. That was a long time ago. We used to be in the Army Reserves. And I went with my suitcase. It looked like in a movie, I guess, because I had a rope tied around one end of the suitcase. I don't know. I can't remember what was in the suitcase. But I thought everybody went to New York City. I mean, you went to a bigger... And now one of my family, and I have a lot of family, ever went to New York City. I just did that on my own. They stay stuck in their little communities and the little familiar stuff, and they consequently, you go back, and after 20 years, after hello, where do you go? I mean, you don't resonate very much and I'm not criticizing them. I say, but life really needs to be about growth if it's going to be an interesting experience till the time that we depart from the earth plane. So anyway, all right. Now this, of course, is related. If you're going to leave the attachments, if you're going to leave all the habits and patterns that keep you stuck in the comfort zone, be willing to step into the unknown where creation takes place. That's where creation takes place, stepping into the unknown. Now, may I say that in the program, we have little exercises about all this because, let me tell you, just reading it, you don't begin to, you're only scratching the surface. I am still, I'm going to be doing an overview of this Thursday night at the Center for Spiritual Living. I've given the class every year now for a number of years. And as I prepare for the class, I rediscover why these things are all true for me and why I need to continue working with this stuff. Because there are so many times when I don't want to take that step and push out against my comfort zone. But if we're going to create, we have to be willing to step into the unknown. Does anybody here have an example of how you've done that recently? Where you've done something new or different, where you didn't know how things were going to work out, but you did it, Jeff?
Singing.
You did?
Yeah.
Where, here?
Here, well, flip-flops, actually.
Flip-flops?
Flip-flops, my first karaoke,
Good for
couple
you.
of months ago.
Oh, there's no way I would do that.
Yeah.
That's not an unknown I would step into.
Yeah.
You wouldn't either.
I think Mickey was there that night. June was there that night too, I think.
Yeah, June sang too.
Yeah, June sang too.
Oh, yes. I also stepped out.
Way out.
Jeff cheering me on right at the edge of the stage.
That's
me on.
That's Jeff.
And I actually
Good.
sang.
How did you feel after you were done?
Oh,
You
fabulous.
felt good.
She was a free spirit.
Well,
Hello.
June is a free spirit. Oh, really? What a surprise!
Surprise.
Is there time for another stepping out
Yeah,
story?
sure.
Let's see. I started in the Galt experience because Mickey suggested it to me in 2012. So I've been here in various classes, one of which is acting, the Galt players under our maestro. And I had an opportunity to volunteer to be a model in my Symphony of the Americas group. So I said yes to that, volunteer. We went to Bloomingdale's in Aventura, and I really enjoyed it, and people thought I did a good job, as people think I'm doing a good job with acting, two things I've never done before. So one day I was walking along Los Olas Boulevard, and I saw a company that said on the window, acting, talent and modeling agency. So I just walked in there.
With all your experience that one time.
That's what happens when you just say,
Yeah.
if I don't do this,
Right.
no one else will do it for me.
That's right.
So it's just an example.
Now, a lot of us are far more willing to do that when we're 21, which I was when I got on the train with that suitcase. And I didn't have any idea what was going to happen when I got to the city, except I had a place to stay overnight. But am I going to do that at 111? What I am now? No way in hell. But I'm still trying to consciously take those steps and step into the unknown. They're just not as big as that. You know, I'm not going to pack a suitcase.
One thing about when you're young, you're not leaving anything behind. And you don't have anything to lose, because with me, when I was moving about, that was the case. I didn't have anything to lose. And so, and sometimes if people knew what some of the movings around I did, they would say, well, did you have a plan? Well, I didn't have anything to lose where I was, you know.
If you have a plan, it sometimes isn't quite as much of an unknown, isn't it? Sometimes you just have to take a risk.
My mother was the kind of person who always wanted to know the end from the beginning before she made any move at all. And she was most concerned with me not having that same attitude. She said, oh, but there's a school here. Oh, there's a store close by. I said, well, I'm sure they'll have it where I move.
I never knew anybody who wanted to know what the end looked like before they started. That's a new idea.
That's my mother.
That's everybody. That's everybody's mother. Yeah, exactly. And we do it too sometimes. I mean, I'll do that much more now than I did back then. You're right. What do you have to lose as a kid? And no one is saying do stupid things, but on the other hand, you need to constantly be thinking about the fact, hey, you know, can I take a risk? And just do something new, as June just did, and as Jeff just did, and you know, it's a state of consciousness. That's what we're really talking about. We're talking about growing consciousness and keeping our consciousness alive. Because I'm going to share something with you. I don't want to scare anybody here, because I was told by the Archangel Gabriel, and that relates to because everybody here is over 50, right? Okay, where was I? All right. Develop discernment to choose what serves your highest good. It's that sense of knowing what's right. We have an internal gyro system, and we've all experienced it. You know when you're probably most often aware of it when you don't trust something, when you know it isn't feeling right. We used to tell, you know, in management development, we used to do all these elaborate analysis programs, and then we say after you do all that analysis, then check your gut, because there's an internal gyro system that we all have, and just check it out to see, does this feel right? Does this feel good? Does this make sense? Is this something I ought to consider? Is this, or is there, you know, what do I need to investigate? What other questions should I be asking? So develop discernment, and we do a lot of things in the program that contribute to the idea of discernment and checking in with where you're coming from. Create intentions for directing your life. Have you ever seen a movie that, or can you imagine a movie or a play without a director? It's just a clump of experiences, right, that don't go anywhere. Intentions give a sense of direction to your life. It sort of gives you a sense of where you want to go on your path, what you want to lead towards, what you want to work toward. You have a lot of intentions, and do with your personal life, your work life, your professional life, your relationships, all this other. But just it's so helpful to have a sense of what your intentions are. And of course, I mean, a lot of the stuff I hadn't sit down and tangibly thought about until I sat down and started doing the exercises before I was going to teach this stuff. But it is so valuable to have some clarity, and it isn't as though they're fixed in all time. You know, as we have the experience, we adjust our intentions. But it does give a sense of direction and so on, in the same way that a movie or a play needs a director. A play is not just a series of incidents. They all connect and they lead somewhere. We want our lives to be in a similar kind of construction. This next one has been a big learning experience for me. I don't know about you folks. Develop healthy relationships with a balance of giving and receiving. So much of our lives are, well, all of our lives are involved with relationships. They're relationships with people, and their relationships with organizations, and all kinds of things. And if we don't have, this is a perfect example of where if we don't have a strong sense of self and self-esteem and love ourselves enough, we can open ourselves up to a lot of unhappiness and abuse, can't we? Because we're not creating a healthy balance. And the only way we can have a healthy balance is be clear what our needs are and when to say no. And it's very hard to say no to strong people if you don't have a sense of yourself. And that's not something you just instantly come to. That's a process. It's really a never-ending process. And we all know that that's easier to do in some situations and with some people than with others. Isn't that correct? I mean, there are some people where it's a nice, easy exchange. That's not a challenge. But when you've got an organization or a boss or a relationship, a person, a spouse who is very willful and their focus is all about me, it's very difficult to challenge a healthy balance between me and you. And the only way we can do that is we have a strong sense of self and self-esteem. Any thoughts come to mind as you think about that idea?
I've ended up just not being in organizations that I've been in for years because I haven't really liked it. So, and I haven't replaced it with anything. So I'm running around a lot, just.
Well, good for you. I know it's not easy, but good for you. A lot of our work in organization had to do with creating a healthy balance because when you're working with the very best companies like the IBMs and Microsofts and Intels and so on, they are hiring the best people that they can find in terms of education and smarts and achievement and all the rest of it. So, and these folks often have a very strong sense of self. Put them together in a room where they're collaborating on a project, and guess what happens? There's a lot of collision of egos. And when you're trying to manage that, that is really challenging because none of these people have the instinct for balance. Very often they've gotten lots of positive reinforcement, they've got their degrees, they got this, they're being paid a lot of money, everybody defers to them, and here you're trying to get them to compromise and defer to another's, or listen to another's idea, and they won't even listen to each other. So there's a lot of skill that has to come into doing that, just as it is in life. There's a lot of skill that has to go into the idea of creating balance. And again, again, this is an experiential kind of workshop, but it's still an important concept to keep in our minds that when we're not feeling good, get in touch with our gut. Our discernment is telling us this isn't feeling good. If it isn't feeling good, very often it's because there isn't a good, healthy balance there. And guess who ain't getting their fair share? And it's because we're not, because that's why our stomachs aren't feeling terribly good. Pay attention to that. That's important information. It's our internal gyro system telling us, flashing a warning sign here. It doesn't tell us what to do, but it tells us we have to stop the forward motion here. Okay. Discover your gifts and talents and joyful ways to employ them. Joy is such an important thing here. All right, we're 21 or 22 or whatever age we are. Or 42 or we're 62 or we're 82 and maybe even more than that, 102. How do we decide where on the path to go? What are the clues? It's sort of like a whodunit, except you're not saying who committed the crime. It's who am I? What are my gifts and talents? What do I want to do with my life? What brings me joy? If there was one more powerful word in the whole program than joy, I don't know what it is. Because the clues as to what we should be doing have to do with our gifts and talents. That distinguishes every single one of us. I may be a singer, I may be an artist, I may be whatever I am, but that doesn't mean like I'm anybody. You'd have 100 artists in the room, each one is uniquely who they are. You have 100 people in the room, singers, they all have their own unique voice and gifts and talents. Every single one of us is a unique human being. And so the path we take The clue has to do with our gifts and talents and what we find joyful. Because you're going to see that the last thing is let joy guide you forward on your path. That's what our lives ought to be. Our lives ought to be joyful. And one of the best ways to feel joy is to get in touch with the gifts and talents, because if it's a gift, if it's a talent, we like using it, right? I happen to always could write, and I like writing. And I'm really stupid, and I remember, because I was thinking with my head, I was so tired of being poor. I grew up poor. Not poor. We didn't have any money, but I wasn't poor. And I went into writing. Look, if you want to be poor, go into writing. There's a few superstars, but let me tell you, most of the people work in the, if you get a job in the newspaper, that's a shrinking industry. So, and you write in most places, and you're not really paid very much. Well, I was tired of it. I was the director of economics, blah blah blah, whatever they call it, for Scholastic magazines, and I had been recognized by the one division of Congress as running the best articles for secondary education and all that. And this was back in the 60s, and I was earning $12,000 a year. And I had friends who were making $100,000 and $200,000 in the securities markets. And, and I was grinding away, and I was working weekends. And so I thought, hell, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to join E.F. Hutton. Did you remember those old commercials?
Oh, right.
But if you listen, don't listen. Well, anyway, I knew I was going to hate it. I knew it. But I was offered a job, and I took it because I thought I was going to be able to make some money. Well, I didn't make any money, and I was miserable, and I hated it. It was just wretched. And I knew it was going to be wretched because my internal gyrus system was telling me it had nothing to do with my gifts and talents. I must say that because of the experience with that, I went with Merrill Lynch, and I was director of marketing for the economic consulting division. And then when I left that to go into management development, I was able to work with big financial organizations because I had been a VP with Merrill Lynch. It contributed nothing in terms of anything valid, but nonetheless, they thought it did. It looked good on a resume, that whole thing. So, I mean, it isn't as though your experience doesn't have value, but if you're looking to be joyful and enjoy your work, pay attention to whether or not it reflects your gifts and talents and whether or not it's a joyful way to use them. Okay, and then when you pull this all together, decide what you want. Because that, along with your intentions, gives a sense of direction. If you're just going to go around in one direction one day and off to another direction the other day, where are you going to be at the end of 10 years? You're probably going to be pretty frustrated. Yeah, you got a question?
Something that's not up there that
there's a lot
I'm
not
going
up there.
to speak briefly. If you're always alone and you study on these things, this won't happen as quickly. You have to be out where there are people. But the most important thing is you need to be observant and listen to what the people are saying to you and read between the lines.
Now, you just said something very important, maybe more important than you know, because what you just said, how does what you just said fit into the idea of set your intentions? Because you just said you got to be with people, right? Okay, so what would intention be that you would then decide to formulate? You're going to find a way to be with people?
You're presenting yourself to a cross-section, and you're searching. You're also discovering your talents.
Yeah.
You're open to them.
Exactly
So
right.
I'm missing
But understand what I'm
say.
saying. You felt that you recognize the importance of doing this with people, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that could so easily feed into one of your intentions becomes to be with people. that you
Right.
can begin to exercise and practice and learn all this stuff with. So as your needs
You're
develop,
correct.
as you relate to this stuff, it starts to affect the intentions you create. So one feeds on the other, feeds on the other, feeds on the other.
Exactly.
Get it?
But in capital letters is to be observant
Absolutely.
and listen. Otherwise, it's all about you.
That's right. That's right. That's where the balance comes in. The balance of giving and receiving. That has to do with communication too. Don't we want conversations? Does anybody want to sit and listen to a speech? Have you noticed, unfortunately, how often, every so often I get into a workshops situations where someone just doesn't know. I mean, they just talk, and they dominate the whole class. And if I said nothing, what are they showing to the whole class? They're just orals, and it's all about them. Exactly. But that awareness then presents you. You couple that with the awareness of creating a balance between giving and receiving, and you start to realize that you're going to have to address this in some way. You're either, about the choices of whether or not you're going to be around them, whether or not you want to address the issue of a balance. There's listening and speaking as opposed to just listening or just speaking. But it's with the rising consciousness that you can begin to create a balance in your life.
Another dimension. It's not just people. It's when you click that TV on to any channel and you hear something and it changes your life. It could be in a commercial, it could be a piece of news, reading books by great authors.
So what's your point?
My point
Getting
is
outside of yourself.
everything.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just people.
And
Books, movies.
Yeah, it's taking a class in life mastery, all that.
This, you.
Yeah, okay. And you. Boundaries.
Oh,
This is another one. Now, if you don't love yourself, this is going to be really hard.
right.
What are boundaries?
Hmm.
What are we talking about here?
Hmm.
Well, I just came off a 6-week course on
And can you say it in one sentence?
that. Boundaries or limits that you set
Exactly.
for yourself.
Say it again, say it, what? I can hear.
Boundaries are
Limits.
that you set
Limits.
for
Right,
yourself.
right, exactly.
Are there limits?
What happens when you don't set boundaries? What can happen if you don't set boundaries?
Chaos.
There's a balance, isn't it? You can be walked all over.
Yeah.
And you're all the things we're really talking about. There's no opportunity to really express any of that because it becomes you or me, not you and me, and it's very hard to have healthy relationships when you can't create the healthy balances.
I
that you
think
need.
it's disrespectful not to respect others' boundaries.
Now, I didn't have a I didn't know what a boundary was. I mean, I was raised to say, yeah, I was the oldest of 4 kids, so I had a lot of responsibilities. I was never allowed to say no. I was in an Italian household with a very rigid kind of things, and you can carry that out into the world. And in some situations, you just say yes because we don't know how to say no. Now, I've gotten a lot better at it, but I find that conditioning coming up. When I'm in a tough, challenging situation where maybe I'm re-experiencing what I experienced in my childhood, I can feel that stuff going on in me. And it's only with the kind, now I gotta love myself enough to say no, however I'm saying no, or to put up a boundary, however I'm putting up that boundary. But it's not easy all the time. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not easy. It's that consciousness. But all this stuff is about rising consciousness. Do I use it? I will always be the student. I never will present myself as an expert in this stuff, because let me tell you, there are times when I'm really good at this, and there are times when, did I ever take the course, let alone teach it? Loving is really important. So does anybody want to say anything more about boundaries? That's a yeah.
Well, I find like with friends sometimes, I tend to overlook a lot of small stuff, because I don't want to cause a confrontation.
Right.
They say pick your battles, but then they don't always do the same thing, opposite, and then you reach a point where now you've had it, because you haven't expressed each
Yeah,
time.
and it builds up, and and then sometimes you overreact.
And here you thought you were doing a positive thing by overlooking things,
Yeah.
and for the sake of the friendship. But now you don't even, I don't know, it
Yeah.
doesn't seem reciprocal.
So what might be a good thing to do?
Communicate.
You mean each time somebody says something that you should address it? I mean, is
Well,
it-
not every time, but you used a very wise phrase when you said pick your battles. So you choose your times, but we all know, I mean, there's no perfect thing to really do, but we know what happens if this is really an abusive thing that just is really annoying, and we just let it go. What do? We get increasingly frustrated, and then sometimes we overreact. So it's the best we can do the best we can. This is just a reasonable use of this stuff. There's no perfect way to do any of this, but the more we do it, the better we get at it, just like anything else. Okay, now look we all have challenges. See challenges as opportunities for learning and growth. Michael says, they all say, there's a gift in every challenge. There's a gift in every challenge. Another allied to teaching is the fact that we create our reality by our thoughts, by our words, and by the power of the feeling behind them. So listen to the tape that goes on in our heads. Listen to whether or not there's a sync between what we're saying and what we're thinking, and also whether or not there's sync behind the feelings. You may think that I'm always going to be affirming prosperity, but if you're feeling very poor and your feelings are not consistent with what you're saying and thinking, they start to work at cross purposes. And we can be creating some of our own challenges, but there's a gift in there if we stop and look for it. If we don't look for the gift, we blow it, we miss it, the gift, and so we just have the challenge. That sounds very glib, and I don't want it to be, but this is something that as you work with it more, you really begin to see that almost, especially in retrospect, we can look back to challenges we've had. Usually it's been a growth opportunity on some level or other, or it could have even been a bigger growth opportunity. After doing all this stuff, and I look back in the earlier years, if I had only, have you ever said that kind of thing? I have greater wisdom and perspectives. We all do, of course. That's what happens when you become senior citizens. You have all this wisdom that you've accumulated. Anything you want to say about that one? And the last one, let joy guide you forward on your path. I find this one increasingly a little shortcut to making a decision. Do I want to do this or not? Is this important to me or not? Is it going to be joyful? Do I want to do this? Is it going to make me happy? We have the right to be happy. I was never raised to think that work was fun, so I didn't think I should that I had the right to look for fun in work. That seemed frivolous. But everything we do really should be inherently joyful, and the only way is if we resonate with it, if it reflects our gifts and talents, if we enjoy doing that kind of thing, if it gives us a sense of adventure, if it gives us a sense of newness, if it gives us a sense of energy and vitality. Jeff was talking about something yesterday, I think. Weren't you referring to whether or not it raises the energy or lowers it?
Yeah. I said, do you want to come in the room and have the room lifted, or do you want to come in the room and bring it down?
Exactly. And everything really is energy, and we all know that we reflect the energy. We know that there's some people project an energy we enjoy being around, and some people project an energy we don't enjoy being around. And it's true for everything, really. So we have to pay attention. What are we resonating with? What seems important? What's our discernment telling us? Does that feel good? How do we feel about it? Because our feelings tell us where we should be and where we shouldn't be. We need to really pay attention to that. And we got the right to really do that. There's an additional thought here that I only added because I had this experience on the beach shortly after I read it. Dennis Merritt Jones is a wonderful author. He's written a few. The book that I took this from is The Art of Uncertainty, I think. And he's talking about the importance of stepping into the unknown. But anyway, witness the effortlessness of life unfolding before your eyes. Then align with the energy of ease and see it how it can filter into your life experience each day. I had that thought in my mind, and I was when you walk down the street that parallels the beach, south of the Hermitage, whatever that street is, and there's this little park there, and there are some chairs there by the beach, and I sat down. It was a day when there was nobody else around, and the ocean was lapping on the beach, and there were some birds whirling around, and the breeze was moving the palm trees, and those little lizards that run around, and I was just so quiet, just kind of watching all this effortlessness of life unfolding. And I thought about aligning my energy of ease with it, and I just went into this wonderful, peaceful state. And the entire world is doing that, and human beings come along with our own kind of dimension of living, and we're in our craziness and our nutness and our traffic jams and all that stuff. And someone made the observation that humans are the only species that pays to live here on this planet. And as I thought about that, that is true. Everything else is eating and living and existing in the planet. The planet supplies it. And here we are, working away at whatever we're working away at, paying our way on a planet that was designed to give us everything we need. And to the degree that we're caught up in doing a lot of stuff we don't like to pay our way, I think that suggests that we have to really kind of look at another way of living and existing here on Earth. That's what I feel. I want to finish reading something that the first book the older you get, the more accoutrements you need. The first book I wrote was The Second Coming. The Archangel Gabriel Proclaims a New Age. I interviewed Gabriel through Channel Robert Baker for 2 years, and asking everything about who are we, why are we here, who's God, what's creation, why are we on Earth, all the rest of it. And one of the things Gabriel says, I hope I brought it with me. It's so interesting. The work I did before Life Mastery, a lot of it feeds into what I was doing in Life Mastery, but I hadn't gotten to Life Mastery yet. And it's so interesting when I look back at some of the older stuff, and it's just an unbroken trail of stuff, one step leading to another. But this is what Gabriel said, and I think we who are all above 30 would probably find this very important to hear. I'm going to read it slowly so that you can absorb this. The experience of humanity is not one of becoming more available to life. The process of living, aging, and getting older has become a process of gradually shutting down to life. This has become a normal process, quite the reverse of what it should or is intended to be. You humans often seem to accept limitation and lack rather than growth, expansion, and development because change appears threatening. But the process of living is the process of changing. The process of living from a soul perspective is a process of growth and expansion. That is all your soul is interested in. Your wounded ego is interested in confining, limiting, and keeping things in a comfort zone that it can understand and attempt to control. Allow your ego, housed in the mind, to surrender to your knowing heart and to not knowing, and allow the void to reveal all possibilities and probabilities of life. And that's really what this program, I think, really helps us do, to not shut down to life, to keep expanding and growing and have a rich experience. And that kind of consciousness really reflects out into how you are physically, how healthy you are. If you're healthy mentally and consciously, you become healthy in a lot of other ways too. So any questions? Jude?
I just wanted to comment on this, what Dennis Merritt Jones wrote. It's so comforting, these 3 words, the energy of ease. If we relax, it will happen to us. We're so busy trying to make things happen the way we want them to, or we think they should be done. This week, our maestro and I were having emails back and forth.
This maestro?
Maestro Jeff, our acting
Guilty.
Director. And I was giving all my impressions and about what we should do and maybe this and that. And he wrote back, I think it was a quote from someone, and it said, actors don't think, just don't think, just relax. That's just this week. So are you Dennis Merritt Jones? But
No, he's Jeff Jones's brother.
Jeff Jones,
it's
one time removed.
the energy of ease.
Now, one of the reasons why I love preparing for these programs and doing it is because it keeps pulling me back into this consciousness. Because I get off on my crazy tangents too, like everybody else. And working with this kind of drives me back.
Thank you.
I wanted to just say that I do have some books here. If you want to, we contribute to the Friends of the Library. The book is normally $15. We sell it for 10 here. If you want to, there's no pressure to buy it. But it's a 16-week program. It's not words and words and words. It's all broken down into an outline like a training program, so that you don't have to wade through pages to read. So, anyway, does anybody have any other questions?
Joe, I have a question. You mentioned that you teach, you do something at another.
At the Center for Spiritual Living.
Yeah, what is
You know,
that?
it's sort of a church, except it's really about human development. It's over on 26th Street near 15th. It's right in Woodland Manor. It's near, do you know where Storks is? It's sort of across
Do you
from
remember
the
the
coffee
old
shop.
Science of Mind church? The
It
old
used to be
Science of Mind church?
I do not, but if you tell me that, like you told me the cross street.
15
I have
Avenue,
a pretty
26th
good
Street.
There you go.
15 Avenue, 26th Street.
Maestro knows.
I've been there. I've been there. I've been to the church. I've been to some of his meetings.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, very enlightening.
So anyway, on Thursday night, I'm doing an overview, which is essentially this, but expanding it out because we have more time. All that. Anybody have any other questions? Do you relate to this stuff? Do you take issue with anything here?
It's very.
It's wonderful. It's very, very light and heavy and deep at the same time. Profound, but light and the same. It's a miracle.
Like life's paradox.
You're a miracle.
Well, it's a lot to absorb, and look, folks, every time I present the program, it's sort of like I'm peeling the onion,
Sure.
and I find more. There are no experts on this stuff. There aren't. There just aren't. And anybody who thinks that there is really very
Oh, yeah.
short-sighted,
Oh, yeah.
because it just isn't so.
Do you have the Gabriel book with you? Did you bring the Gabriel book?
I only brought one. This is heavy.
Yeah.
I dragged this
Because
out.
I'd be interested in that one.
You would?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Do you find particular interest in the comments and the questions people ask? I think
Oh, that's the most interesting
what
part.
people say and do is just free. It's free. They're free spirits, and it's so powerful. People's reactions to things, whether they're negative or positive.
Well, you know, everything that people say brings enlightenment to them because it causes you to think a little bit about the issue deeply. And the negative ones are even more valuable than the positive ones
Absolutely.
sometimes. Right, yeah, oh, absolutely.
I was teaching a confraternity of Christian doctrine class one year to little children, maybe 8, and I thought I had just transformed them into these little saints because I was so fabulous.
You say
And
very modestly. of
I
course.
She said
asked
modestly.
She said modestly.
if there were any questions, and this little girl raised her hand and she said, Miss, You have a hole in your shoe.
Well, brought you right back.
Do you think I ever forgot that?
As well you shouldn't.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
I enjoyed it enormously.
I
I enjoyed it very much, yes.